Oh, there you go. That's all official. So for anybody coming on to watch this, it's probably because you've had an issue getting catheters or getting the catheter that you require and had requested. So Maureen will give a little background on herself and the issue that she's come across with patients that she's worked with, and then at least the steps that you would need to take in order to file a complaint. So Maureen.
Hi, I'm Maureen Ledenser. I'm a clinical nurse specialist. My area of specialty is physical rehabilitation. So I've been a CNS in rehab for 15 years now, and I really enjoy it. I work at Sharp Memorial, and so I work with acute spinal cord injured patients or other patients who have troubles emptying their bladder as well. So kind of a passion of mine. One of the things I brought here and have done everywhere I've worked at 3 different hospitals doing this, is bringing the idea of choice to the patient. So I have a cupboard that has all different types of samples, and I allow patients to practice with some different catheters while they're here. And the goal, of course, is to help them find the catheter that works best for them. Some of it's based on their ability, their dexterity, what kind of hand use they have, can they open the packaging, all those sorts of things. So once we find the catheter that works, it's very, very frustrating when we order it and then the patient doesn't end up getting it, or they're told their insurance doesn't cover it, or that sort of thing. So the bottom line about all this is this. I was a case manager for 10 years. And so one of the things I do before I have patients try catheters is I have an idea of what their insurance will or will not pay for. So I try not to introduce a catheter that they cannot get, okay? So you can imagine that I'm shocked when I get this feedback from a distributor that the insurance doesn't cover the catheter. Because the truth is that both Medicare and Medi-Cal cover 200 catheters a month. They don't care which one it is. They don't care about that. They cover 200. The problem is that the distributor pays different prices for the catheters. So maybe for the Magic 3, they might pay 50 cents for that. And Medicare or Medi-Cal might reimburse $2 for that catheter. So they make $1.50, okay? Whereas if the patient likes low Fricorico, maybe that catheter costs the distributor $1.50 per catheter. So now they only make 50 cents. So which catheter do you think they want you to use? They want you to use the one that gets them the most, money in their pocket, because that's what they're in business for. So some of the time in the past, I've been able to, fight this. There's certain distributors that are much better about giving you the catheter that you ask for. Do you want me to say those names on here? Because I'm happy to do that. Okay. So usually in my experience, Byram and ABC Medical are the 2 best when it comes to giving patients the catheters that they would like and we've asked for. But even then, occasionally I'll have a situation where maybe they don't buy in big enough bulk, and it may cost them more to give you that catheter than they're going to be reimbursed for it. If that happens, I understand that. But usually they'll say to me, hey, let's try so-and-so and see what they can do, and we can work it out. But I don't know why, but for some reason recently, especially with Medicare HMOs, but even occasionally Medi-Cal HMOs, it's just been terrible. I mean, we ask for an Origo and they won't give it. They just won't give it, even though I know it's covered. I know they're supposed to. In the past, Medicare, this the way Medicare worked. If you were a Medicare HMO, you could give more than Medicare did, but you couldn't give less. Well, now they're giving less. You know, if they're only going to pay for a catheter that's 50 cents and they're going to allow the HMO to do that, then you can give less now. I even asked the gentleman on the phone that I spoke with about that. And he said, well, you know, we don't really have, you know, he compared it to getting a generic medication. That's how he compared it to, you know, well, we can't stop them from giving a generic medication. That's what he said to me. But I don't know if you've ever had the experience, but sometimes generic medications don't work. And sometimes you really have to have, you know, the brand name instead. So I did finally actually speak to somebody at CMS, which excited me. And I was given this form, which I have sent to Rick, so he has it. And there is a way for you to complete and send this request to them. Now, there's a couple things you need to know. One is that I'm going to start making sure I do this each time so I can fill out the form and submit it as well. It's unusual, but it can be done. But one of the things is normally I'm having conversations with the distributor. I'm not having necessarily conversations with the HMO themselves. And this is what they require, okay? So instead of me just talking to the distributor about the fact that they won't cover this, I'm gonna actually make sure I reach out and talk to the patient's insurance company, whoever they might be. And that way I can have that conversation with them so I can say that I did do that, because they request that on the form. And they told me that in order for them to move forward with the complaint, you have to show that you made an effort to speak to the insurance company themselves. So that's one of the key things about this. And then submit the form. The email that I forwarded to Rick also has the name of the gentleman who you can send the form back to. And you know, he said they were happy. I'm hoping that if enough of us start doing this, maybe it'll shine a spotlight on the problem and they'll actually address it. From my perspective as a healthcare provider, I find it really insulting when I've spent the last month working with a patient to figure out the right catheter for them, and somebody who has no education about any of this comes in and says, nope, I want more money. I'm only going to send the patient this. To me, they're practicing medicine without a license. That's why I went to school all these years to be able to do this. And it just is not right. I think it's actual fraud. But until somebody steps in and looks at this, it's never going to go away. So did I cover everything, Jim? Is there anything else you can think of that I could share?
One of the issues that I've had over the years is at some point you're getting this particular product that you've been using for a while, and then suddenly insurance says we can't pay for this anymore, or there's cost cutting, or the provider no longer gets enough reimbursement, so they stop providing it. So you have to choose something different. Or sometimes Medicare wants all kinds of chart notes and just make you go 15 different hoops and just to get the product. Meanwhile, you're running out of your supplies. And I've had that a number of times where I had to go to certain providers and ask for samples. And it's usually with catheters that have bags attached to them. And that was my most recent experience.
Good point.
And I've used Byram for years, and I needed a particular bag catheter. They said, we don't even provide that one. So I had to switch to another provider. And then they said, well, you've got ostomy supplies. We want that account too, or we won't deal with you. It's just things like that. So it's a really bad situation out there all around. And I have straight Medicare, and that's Medicare's rules. Medicare rules are pretty stringent, unfortunately, and Medi-Cal usually picks up where Medicare, falls off, and they'll buy more things, and it seems like they have more leeway in what you can get. And but I've always been able to get the amount I need. It's just the product. I can't always get what I want.
So there are 3 different types of catheters. It's good to know and understand this. So the most basic catheter, it's a 51 is the number that we use. And it's a basic straight catheter, whether it's hydrophilic meaning it's lubricated with water, or a gel catheter. Okay, those are the least expensive. Okay, the next is a 52, and that is a coude catheter. So that's the catheter with the tip that's curled up, right? It's usually used for patients who have some prostate issues. Okay, and then 53 is the catheter with the bag, and they are the most expensive catheter. Medicare has very specific criteria about patients who can get those catheters. Number 1, you have to have 2 UTIs, and they have to be at least 30 days apart. There has to be a certain number in the lab work regarding the white count bacteria. And if you meet that criteria, you can start getting those catheters, but they are the most expensive.
And that's per year.
Yes, that's per year. Yes, that's per year. Yes, so we'd start over. Yes. And so that's why, Jim, you probably are getting some of this pushback. The one thing I think would be good for all of you to know that's kind of interesting to me is that most of the major catheter companies now have purchased their own distributorships. So what I'm doing with my patients to try and help get them the catheter they want is, if my patient qualifies for the, let's say, Hollister Pro Plus pocket, then I'm using Hollister's distributor. Okay. If they're using Origo from Lofric, then I'm using the Lofric distributor, because they're not going to want to switch you out of the catheter because it's their catheter. So I'm hoping this will help. It's also going to do another thing, because one of the things I find a lot recently is we write the prescription, we send it out, we send the patient home with a 3-day supply, and it's a month later and they still haven't gotten a shipment. So the patients are calling me for a month to get catheters because they don't have any. So if I go to that product's company, they're also going to supply them with catheters until they're shipped. So it does kind of 2 things. Okay. So that's another thing that you can consider. Bard has their own company now. I think Coloplast also, I think all of them do. So it's kind of a trick that I'm using in order trying to bridge the gap and help patients get what they want.
And don't a lot of the HMOs though have distributors that you're required to use and you don't have a choice?
They do, but what these companies have assured me they will do is they will search until they find a company who will provide it, who's in their network, the insurance company's network. They have huge lists now of every blessed HMO that they cover, and they've worked really hard to have contracts. So they assured me, we'll see how it goes, that they will try and make that happen.
Maureen, could I ask, how important is it to you to have the sales rep for those companies? I mean, readily available to help and provide samples if needed, and or do you really work with the sales reps much?
I do. And I work with all of them, and all of them provide me the samples because that's how I have my supply closet, basically. I have brought a couple of the catheters in-house, the ones that the patients like the most. Mm-hmm. So that way they can use as many as they need to during their stay here. The other ones I have to kind of limit because they run out, right? So, but no, they're really pretty good about working with me and getting me samples and trying to help with the problems. Mm-hmm. The fact that they all pretty much now even have, what would you call it? They all have a program that's run by nurses where they're a resource to the patients. Most of them have that as well. And I try and hook the patients up with that as well. So.
Okay. And I know some of the companies have end users that they consider kind of ambassadors too.
Correct.
So, which some I know will have a supply as well. Should the sales rep not be available or something. So
Yeah, the last thing I will ever want is for someone to end up in the emergency room because they don't have a catheter. How awful is that? Right.
mhm.
So yeah, so use those resources once you get home.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Just so you know, Maureen, the VA has 180 catheters a month.
Okay.
But you can get more if your provider writes a justification.
Yeah, I rarely write for more than 180. So
Yeah.
okay, good to know though.
that's quite a I'm going to date myself here, but when I was injured 45 years ago, and I don't know when intermittent cath it started, but in the area that I was in, the urologist and I'm so fortunate that he happened to be the urologist at the hospital where I rehab, because it was Dr. Michael DeCenzo, and but he came in and said, "Listen, this is what I like to do with some of the spinal cord injury or someone similar, and it's called intermittent cath." And I went, "Okay," and he showed me, and he goes, "I know as you're doing this the first few times, you're going to look going, even if you have sensation out, you're looking and going, oh, this has got to be hurting me." Yeah, and he was great. Until I moved to California, he was my urologist, and I stayed in touch with him when I moved out here. This was back in Massachusetts, and just a wonderful human being. But from the insurance standpoint, I was given one a month, and it was the red rubber, and I had so much tone. My sphincter, I mean, it was like you needed a nail and a hammer to drive that through that sphincter. And, that's probably not a good image, but anyway, but, I mean, so this thing oftentimes would double up in the urethra. And that was, yeah, that was no fun. So, and people go, how, my gosh, you must have had UTIs galore. And I did for 2 years. For 2 years, I had, every couple months I had a UTI. And then all of a sudden, so yeah, I was taking 500 milligrams time release twice a day. And, but that toned it down. And then after a couple of years, they just kind of went away. I think I just developed such a resistance to all those little heebie-jeebies that, they couldn't get hold. And, to this day, I mean, I can go 2 years without a UTI. And I'm not going to say I use one a month to this, but I mean, I don't use one per, or for one per cath. I don't use that. I mean, I just don't. Maybe it's a bad habit, but I don't get UTIs.
La 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 la.
I know.
Yes, I don't.
Well, I've been in this business long enough that Dr. Lapidus was the one who reintroduced intermittent cath. Actually, it was originally started by Dr. Gutmann back in England, but it fell out of favor during the 1950s. And then Dr. Lapidus did a bunch of studies. He was the one who used to say, if you drop your catheter on the floor, pick it up and cath with it, because it's more important to cath than to let yourself get over distended. But I remember back in the 1970s, when I first started working in this area, we would spend inordinate amounts of time teaching patients how to clean their catheters to reuse them.
Yep. Yeah.
Because it wasn't until 2008 that Medicare said, stop reusing and use one a day. Yeah, one each time. So
Right.
that's
Yeah, and by
not that long
point,
ago, really. So yeah.
you know, that'd been 24, 30, I had been injured for 32 years by that point.
Yeah.
So, I've got, though I do draw the line, I've got two friends who will use they cath, they rinse, they roll it up and put it in their sock. And that's where they keep them. And use them over and over and over again. And I'm going, okay.
Well, there were actually some really good nursing research studies done in the 1990s about the best way to clean catheters, and that's not one of them, Rick.
I kind of figured that out. I thought, yeah, I don't think, I don't think.
I mean, I still would teach patients how to clean and reuse if they got into a pickle, like Maureen was mentioning, you know, where your supplier suddenly says, sorry, no catheters. And
yeah.
Or if you were on a trip and you didn't pack enough, it's, you know, it's a fairly not an involved procedure, but a lot of people would do things that were actually potentially harmful, like soaking their catheters in bleach or hydrogen peroxide, or I even had one patient who used to put his in Listerine.
Man.
Minty fresh.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. That's
Like,
I
you know,
remember,
kills germs, you know, that's what it says on the label.
oh gosh.
I remember boiling the red rubber catheters for 2 or 3 years.
We used to save baby jars so that people could put the catheter inside a baby jar, and then, like you were canning, you would put the jars into a kettle and fill everything with water, and then boil them and let it cool, and then pick them up with a pair of tongs, pour the water off, put the can on, a lid on, and then set those aside. And you would have to do that with a whole bunch of catheters so that you would have enough for, say, that week.
Yeah, they would get, with hot water, what I found is they would become just really pliable. And then I had
Especially the
even
red
more
rubber.
difficulty trying to cath. So, I mean, it was just like, oh gosh. Hey, Jeff, I didn't know if you have had any, this conversation is about getting catheters, getting the correct catheters through your insurance company, and any issues. So I don't know if you have any issues that you've had with that.
Well, I had a couple. One time I ran out and I went to my doctor, and my insurance changed. And so when the insurance changed, the insurance said, no, we're not going to give you catheters. And so I went to the doctor to try to get a prescription, but the nurse that was there, her dad was casting. I don't know if he died or not, but her dad used to cast, and she said I had extra casts, and she said she gave me those, and then right after that they finally approved me for catheters. But then I had an insurance company or one catheter place, and I had another one, and it kind of got screwed up, but they double ordered me catheters. So now I've got some on hold, you know, just in case I do need them, but now everything seems to be working. But one time I went across the border and I didn't bring enough catheters, and I went to the emergency room at Sharp Growth Spot, and I just asked to see the triage nurse, and I said, there's nothing wrong with me. I just need to cast. And she kind of put me aside, and she put me in a room and gave me a catheter, and she gave me two to go home with. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Now, have you ever had an issue in the past where, you know, you had requested the type that you normally use and the supplier gave you something different? You know?
Yeah, they did that twice. And in my situation, I don't have access to my bathroom. And I do have a room that I shower in, but I don't have an access to my bathroom. My door is only 20, I think it's 18 or 20 inches wide where I live. And there's no way to change it. So I asked for the Pro, I forgot the name of it.
The Vapro Plus Pocket? Or
Yeah.
Vapro? Okay.
And they've been sending me those ever since I've been injured, other than a couple of times I had order problems. But seems to go like clockwork now.
Okay, okay.
The
But I
other
like
thing-
those even better because I can go anywhere, and even at home, my girlfriend, she just carries the bag and puts it in the toilet. But at least I have a way of casting without having a problem at home.
Right.
I haven't been in my bathroom since I've been injured.
The other thing to remember is if you're changing insurance and you have private insurance, like not Medicare, Medi-Cal, if you're changing your insurance, remember there's hundreds of policies. So always double check and make sure catheters are covered because some don't cover them.
Yeah.
So just make sure.
Yeah, it was kind of a hassle because I was like, what am I supposed to do? You know, and wait to pee till I get insurance to cover it, you know?
Yeah, we changed insurance, but I think I had made mention where I am an ambassador for one of the catheter companies. So, you know, I've been fortunate with regard to that.
I don't know if you know it or not, but I use the Hollister ones, and we made a Christmas tree for the sharp rehab
Yes.
and put the bells on it.
That's
And yeah, and then they changed the bells, so we're gonna probably do them with the little bells now. But I thought that was pretty funny. And
nice.
last year I sent them a tree with bells on it in the mail.
Yeah,
Hollister probably
had it
thought,
out
what
with
the heck?
Jim. Yes.
I always thought there should be something you should be able to do with those bells. I always felt guilty throwing them in the trash.
Oh, my girlfriend decorates them with glitter and a little bit of like a lace type stuff. Makes them for Christmas bells for the trees. It's funny as heck. She's very creative.
But I think I'm going to at least pause. There you go.
I knew I had one.
I'm going to pause the recording.